When you clearly don't work somewhere, but people seem to think you do. Welcome to this episode of I Don't Work Here, Lady. Our first one is from Functional Psychopath. This is a short one, but sweet. I'm listening to the Dune series again on Audible to prepare for the movie coming out. I'm at a Western wear store getting my winter hat reformed and cleaned. While they're doing that, I'm looking around, as one does. I have my earphones in. Now, I have a prosthetic ear on my right side that is held on by magnets. When I have earphones in, I still put them in both ears to just make things look even, and it takes up some of the weight that would just be hanging off my left side if I didn't. Not that the weight is heavy, just annoying. I'm kneeling over looking at some boots and my earphones are yanked off and there's a woman barking at me. I'm pissed because she's holding on to my earphones in her hand and I could see my ear is still attached to them. I'm pissed, but the image of a Karen barking while my ear is swinging from my earbud was enough to get me laughing. She stops and asks what's so darn funny. I point and ask if I can have my ear back. She looks down and screams, drops everything, and runs away. I went back to shopping and eventually got my hat taken care of. I hope she dreams about my ear every night. The end. The fact that she just literally had an ear in her hand, I think that was a first to her. I really do hope she dreams about your ear, because then she'll know she should keep her hands to herself. This next one is by This is Mockingjay 2020. I'm a registered nurse at a long-term care facility. I had just started a 12-hour night shift. One item passed on to me from day shift was that a new electric bed had been delivered to a resident, but it wasn't working. The company was supposed to bring a new one that same night. While I was passing bedtime meds, someone in a uniform walked up and asked me to sign for something they had just delivered, a controller something or other. I remember thinking, well, that was an easy fix for a broken bed. I didn't read the logo on his shirt. I signed it and they told me they couldn't plug it in. I asked them to come back with me to the room because I didn't understand why the bed cord wouldn't plug in. After getting to the room, I got more confused upon seeing the bed was plugged in. I picked up the remote for the bed, pushed a button, and it didn't do anything. I looked at the guy and said, "It's plugged in, but it's still not working." That's when I found out he had switched out a controller for her power wheelchair, not the bed, and there was no plugs available for it. Turned out he was from a completely different company and just happened to come when the bed company was expected. I apologized profusely and told him we were expecting the bed company that night as well. Thankfully, he thought it was funny. Things happen, and if things between shifts aren't communicated properly, there's definitely bound to be room for confusion, especially like this instance. I'm glad in the end though, it all seemed to work out. This next one is from Gamavon. I thought I'd still post this because it happened. I just got off work as a delivery driver for a pizza place. My uniform is nowhere close to the King Soopers. It's black and blue, but mostly black. I stopped into King Soopers to find bread and some Prilosec. While I was looking at the bread, noting how much regular white bread was better than the wheat bread, I was thinking of getting in every way except the fiber. As I was putting the wheat bread back, a woman I passed by multiple times through the store asked behind me where the tortillas were. I didn't answer because I didn't think she was talking to me, but there was no one else in the aisle and no one else answered. And I still felt her behind me. I looked at her, and as it processed that she was asking me, I flat out told her feeling frazzled, "I have no clue. I don't work here." She laughed and said, "Oh no, you don't work here." Looked at her son, laughed with him, and walked away laughing. It was, honestly, really jarring after an 8-hour shift, and for some reason, I feel extremely embarrassed. I know she probably felt really embarrassed too. I hope she found what she was looking for. Hopefully this is my only I Don't Work Here Lady post. See, something like this is nice to see, that when somebody makes a mistake, they don't freak out and just continually accuse you that you do in fact work there, they'll have your job, etc. She accepted it and moved on. This next one is by Shroudum. After I retired, I took a part-time job at a tool store, mostly to get the employee discount. This store was right next door to a popular farm and ranch supply store. There was a deep overhang in the front of the stores, and the other store kept large bags of animal bedding and such beneath the overhang, but only on their side. One day, after my shift ended, I was hanging out in the front of the store before bicycling home, talking on my phone. Karen pulls up in a nice SUV with a trailer, shoves a receipt in my face, and rudely demands I load a dozen bags of animal bedding for her. I tell her I do not work at the farm and ranch supply store, but I will gladly call them to ask for help for her. Now, to be fair, the tool store and the supply store both had blue shirts, but each had the store's name prominently embroidered on the front. The supply store employees were almost uncomfortably clean cut, and I had rather longish hair and a huge mustache. She starts screaming. She's in a hurry. She's almost out of gas. I am also wearing a blue shirt. Yada yada yada. I politely point to the name on my shirt and again say I do not work for the supply store, and it is not my job to load their products. Again, I offer to call them and ask for help for her. She storms off toward the front of the supply store, yelling about how I should get a haircut and how she's going to get me fired. I said, "Good luck with that, lady," which really pissed her off. Her SUV was idling rather roughly the whole time. Eventually, she comes back with one of the managers of the supply store and an employee who loads the bags of animal bedding. The manager is trying to explain to her that no, I do not work for them and should not be loading their products. About this time, you guessed it, her SUV dies for lack of gas. She goes back inside and I see her leave with a plastic gas can and start hoofing it to the gas station a couple blocks away. Meanwhile, her SUV is still switched on and her dome light is getting dimmer and dimmer and dimmer. I guess someone could have shut the driver's door, but I sure didn't feel like doing it. Having nothing better to do, I stayed to watch the show I knew was about to unfold. After a good hour, she staggers back with a full 5-gallon can. I do not think I would have cared to carry it a couple of blocks. It took her a while, but she finally managed how to pour it into the SUV. As she was pouring it, she was screaming that it was all somehow my fault. She then tries to start the SUV, and of course, it will not turn over. Some kindly old man stops and asks if she needs a jump and gets out his jumper cables. After a few minutes, the SUV turns over, but it will not start. It seems it's one of those that needs a fuse removed and the engine cranked for a while to pressurize the fuel injection lines after running out of gas. I try to tell her this, but she starts screaming at me again and called me some rather uncomplimentary names. Fine, Karen, call AAA or a tow truck. I've used up my good deeds for the day. When a tow truck finally arrives, the driver hooks up his jumper cables, removes the fuse, and cranks the engine for a while. He replaces the fuse and starts it, to the accompaniment of huge clouds of smoke. He smells the gas can, and it seems she bought diesel fuel instead of gasoline. He tells her he will need to tow the SUV and will need the entire fuel system flushed. She screams that I should pay for it, since it was still somehow my fault. With that, I headed for home on my bicycle, telling her, "Have a nice day." It amazes me how many people want to put blame onto others instead of accepting blame for their own stupid actions. This story is a prime case where Karen just refuses to accept that she's made a plethora of mistakes. This next one is from Monkey Chunks. I've recently started working in a middle school in the kitchen, and the uniform is the typical black pants with black polo that has the logo. I worked my first day and had to get some groceries right after. I was in a bit of a rush because I was cutting it close to being back home in time for my crotch fruits bus. Anyways, I was heading down a main aisle to get some rolls and passed by the cooler area with bacon. Now I'm speed walking, wearing an oversized black polo. The new job only had extra larges. Frozen chicken patties and steamable frozen corn all gathered awkwardly in my arms when a man turns and catches my eye. He looked at me and asked if the empty bacon slot was the only one that was on special. Caught like a moth to flame, I walked forward and read all of the signage while listening to him keep inquiring. I pointed out that the thick cut was for the same price. That was when he asked me if there was any more packages of the empty slot in the back. Having never gotten this far in a situation, I looked at him, gave a small laugh and told him I wouldn't know about that because I don't work there. His reaction was priceless. Fist to mouth area, look of oh no very prominent on his face, and his words of apologies. He proceeded to tell me he thought I was a really good salesperson. I laughed, he laughed, and we parted ways. Reading something like this and seeing that people can actually interact in a store, that mistakes can be had, and that somebody is not flying off the handle ripping somebody a new one because they're embarrassed, it's just lovely to see. And our final one is by We Are Destroyers. So the other day I left work and stopped at a craft store. My work uniform is jeans and a forest green golf-style t-shirt with our company name and logo clearly embroidered in white above the left breast pocket area. The store I went to has staff in casual clothes, wearing red aprons with our logo stitched in white near the top. I'm casually looking at yarn when this guy stops at the end of the aisle and asks, "Do you work here?" I laugh and say I wish I did, so stock would be cheaper. He looks at me quizzically and then says, "Well, do you know where the scissors are?" "No, buddy, sorry, no idea." Whatever, he moves on and I find what I need. As I'm standing in line at the tills, an old supervisor from a completely unrelated job recognizes me and we catch up. I pay for my stuff, she pays for hers, and we're standing next to a clearly unmanned till that also happens to be about 15 feet from the entrance and exit. She's not wearing anything remotely red. A customer runs in the entrance, looks at me and says, "Oh crap, I forgot a mask. Do you have one?" Note, I am wearing a disposable one as required by my workplace. I say, "Sorry, no I don't," and she says, "Well, I'll just have to put my hand over my mouth." But like in a manner where she is seemingly asking my permission. I'm like, "Yeah, I guess you'll have to do that." She just walks away. My old supervisor looks at me super confused and is like, "Does she think you work here?" So I tell her about the scissors guy and we laugh about how people are colorblind and apron blind as we leave the store. I'm still confused. I feel like a lot of these people are just completely unaware to their surrounding environment. I mean, I feel like that's the only way to explain how they can make mistakes on the level that they make them. Alright, that's enough stories for the day. Well, that wraps up this episode of I Don't Work Here Lady. If you liked the video, please drop a like, share my content on all of your social media, subscribe if you haven't already, and make sure to hit that bell so you're notified every time I upload, and drop a comment down below. It really helps with the algorithm. Thanks for watching, thanks to my patrons, have a great day and stay safe out there.